Okay, this is Empire State Performance Rally Stage 10 at the Monticello Motorsports Park. And the voice you're hearing is the normal driver sitting in the co-driver's seat. And Kieran, the co-driver, gets his first shot on stage at this event. We've got 2 runs through this, so I felt it was a bonus for Kieran to get a ride. So there we go. Would you like to say anything, sir?
We will see how well I do. Luckily, I know stage notes, but I've never been on a track. And though I've driven this car a lot at street speeds, I've never remotely pushed it, so. Oh, and we have manual brakes, so we'll see about that.
This stage is 3.05 miles.
It's a pretty decent track.
Is that Mike over there? No.
Oh yeah, Mike's right there.
No.
No. Hit arm.
Back up 2 feet, please.
Back up 2 feet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yep, so we're gonna do, you can hold on there, not to hold the brakes, right?
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go left 3 into right 3 onto track.
Okay. Don't give me any more right now.
15. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Left 3, right 3, smoother. Track long, opens 70, right 4 plus, opens, tightens 3, very long. Here's the tightens 3.
Nope.
This is apex here.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Very long 50, left 4 over small crest, into, right 5 short, left 4 plus, very long, opens extra long. Opens extra long, right 3 plus, opens tightens. Here's the tightens 120. Small crest 50, right 3. And then turn left 5 off track. This is the 3. There's the left 5 off track. Onto right 5 long. Into turn left 5 onto track 120. Long small crest 250. Go left a little bit. Right 6 over small crest very long. Stay out into turn right 4. It's here. Off track into left 3 plus into turn right 5 minus, sorry a bit late, onto track 180, right 4 minus, into small crest into left 3 plus short, left 3 plus short into right 3 plus, right 3 minus, Opens 100, right 5 minus 50, left 5 into right 5, plus long, brake into turn right 2. Right 2 on crest here. Opens 350. Long small crest 70. Caution left 3 long over crest off camber. Dial it down a little bit more.
Yep.
Watch it. Okay.
Next then?
Yeah, right 2.
Right 2?
Brake into turn right 2. Plus on crest. Opens 350. No, I've got it all wrong.
Okay, yeah. It says left 3.
3 over crest off camber. We did that already.
Yep, next.
You're going to be into the finish.
Done.
Well done. Sorry, I messed up.
No problem. That was fun. I drifted on that last
Yes, I saw that.
turn. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. Holy shit.
Good morning. You guys switched this morning, huh?
Yeah, just for this run.
Oh, nice. 74814.
Thanks.
No problem.
Compare it with that. Are the seconds and minutes close?
Where am I looking?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Straight across.
Yep. And then left.
And then left.
Holy crap.
Your heart beating?
I don't know.